Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a new video. So it is a beautiful day today. Not too hot, not too humid. So I wanted to go for a nice drive. The car is just cleaned a couple days ago. So I wanted to go out and just have some fun and enjoy the car. But I figured I would take the camera along with me since a lot of people were asking me if I could do a review on the new Fortune Auto coilovers that I just installed. If you guys saw that whole video series, I did the install, dialing it in, and then getting the alignment. I gave an initial review, just kind of going over my thoughts, what I thought immediately. But now that I have some decent seat time on the car with the new coils, I figured it would be a good time to do a review. Go over all my thoughts, let you guys know the differences that I feel between the two coilover setups that I have been running, the Gen 5 Fortune Auto coilovers compared to the ones now, which are the Gen 8s. I also switched up the spring rate and the spring brand, so it's pretty much an entirely different setup than what I have been running. So I figured I'd let you guys know what I think of the new ones. You know, do I prefer the old setup? Do I prefer the Swift Springs or the new Hypercos, the spring rates, all that information. So let's go ahead, let's get in the car and just have a little discussion while we're going for a little drive. So if you guys don't know, I have been running Fortune Auto coilovers for quite a long time. Back in 2017, I picked up my first set of Fortune Auto coilovers. They were the Gen 5s, and I got 7K Swift Springs as an upgrade. I ran them for 5 years. I had over 30,000 miles on them, and they never skipped a beat. They were fantastic. I loved everything about them. Super comfortable. You may have some questions as to why I went to 7K instead of the 8K that normally people go with. At the time, the car was a daily driver. I was really focused on keeping it as comfortable as possible. So I wanted to dial down the spring rate just a little bit, just to make it a little bit more compliant, just for everyday use. And I was thrilled with that setup. It handled exceptionally well when you wanted it to. When you're taking it through the back roads and everything and pushing the car harder, it drove so nice. It was super flat. It had a little bit of float, but to be expected with a softer spring rate. They were the 500 series, I forgot to mention that. Now the new setup that I decided to go with is a Fortune Auto 500 series coilover setup. I was thinking about a few other different brands, but ultimately I knew I was so happy with the first set of Fortune Autos that it was kind of a no-brainer. So what I did was I got the new generation, the Gen 8s, and I decided to change up the spring rate. This car is no longer a daily driver. It is a garage queen now, so I don't have to be so focused on making it as comfortable as possible. So I decided to go up a spring rate to 8K. Now, most people would probably go to 9K, 10K, but for me, I still want to keep this car as compliant as possible. I still like the fact that you can drive it every single day if you wanted to. And once in a while, I'll put the truck, I'll keep it parked, and I'll drive the STI all week. I still want to have that option to be able to be comfortable in this car and take it wherever I want to and still enjoy the ride and it not be so unbearable. So I installed these and I'm actually pretty darn low. My entire setup is pretty aggressive. I'm running over -4 degrees of camber all around. I have pretty meaty tires on here. I have 265, 35, 18 Sport Cup 2s on here. So it's a really chunky, meaty tire, which I personally love. Now, I am running a little bit lower than I was in the past on my other setup, but I kind of wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to go a little bit lower, but still be very, very compliant and very, very flat on the road. Now, I will say it is definitely a difference from the 7K to the 8K, as well as going to a different spring brand. I was running Swift, but I decided to try out Hyperco this time. Hyperco is like the spring to go with. Swifts are very good. But Hyperco, everybody always says they're a little bit more accurate. You know, I've heard they actually hold their spring rate longer, so they're more accurate overall. So, you know, over time as they break in, they're not going to lose and bump down a spring rate. They're kind of gonna stay where they are. So changing over to the 8K was definitely the move for this car, for me, and what I use this for now. It's definitely a little bit more firm, but I want that. You know, this car is just, it's so perfect, but having that little bit of float in the old setup was kind of annoying, simply because, you know, this car is set up so well that I want it to be as flat as possible when I'm driving it a little bit harder. Now, in terms of damping, I've been playing around with it a little bit. On my old setup, I was running 18 all around, 18 from soft. In this setup, believe it or not, I'm actually running them a little bit firmer. I started at 15, thinking that since it's a higher spring rate, that I would want something a little bit softer and it would kind of be somewhat comparable to the 7K Swifts. What I found was probably even more comfortable with the 8Ks on here. So I wanted to bump up the damping a little bit, so I decided to bump up to 22 from soft. These are 24-way adjustable. And I really, really enjoy how this is set up currently. Granted, I am very, very low, so having it a little bit stiffer than normal, I think is definitely important. Now, do I scrub? Do I rub? I do, a little bit. Not as much as I thought, or not as much as you would think. The rear fenders are rolled to help with that. They have been rolled from a couple different sets of wheels ago. But overall, I do rub in the front on harder driving when I'm going on a turn and I hit a dip. It's just the fender liner, so it's not the actual fender, obviously. In the rear, I scrub a little bit. Again, just on the fender liner, it's not on the actual fender. So I have been thinking about bumping up the ride height just a little bit. Not because I don't like the way it looks or it handles, but just to give a little bit more practicality. It is extremely low, I'm telling you. It doesn't look that low on camera and on film and stuff, but in person, crazy, crazy low. And like I said, I'm lower than my previous setup, which was pretty low. I have scraped the front lip a couple times. I did that as well on the previous setup, but still, I find myself having to be a little bit more careful now and just kind of having to be a little bit more cautious about what's in front of me. Overall, the car on turns and just, it feels so flat. I love it. It truly reminds me of my E46 M3 when I had my KW V2 coilovers on. That car was so flat on turns, it was crazy. And I've been kind of hunting to find that feel again since I got rid of that car years and years ago. And I think I finally have found it. This car is insane. It feels so good on the street. I mean, obviously the tires help and just everything else with all the other suspension components that I have, which is not much. It's just rear lower control arms as well as sway bars and sway bar end links. So that's it, nothing crazy. But the car just feels so good. I mean, it's hard to show just right there. The car, it didn't float at all. It just stays where it is. And you can just get back on the car so much harder and so much quicker than what you're used to. I mean, granted, you know, we're on the street, we're not driving crazy right now. You know, I mean, right now we're only doing 27 miles an hour, so it's kind of hard to show on camera, but just the feel of this car, especially with the seats and everything, just the whole package, it really handles so well. Now, some of you may be questioning, why did I switch if I was so happy with the previous setup? Now, the main reason is because everything on the car that I have recently done is fairly new. So me kind of going back into the suspension and kind of updating that was really important to me. I really wanted to kind of refresh it, make it all new again, and just kind of start at square one and have a fresh setup with pretty much everything. So knowing there's only about 1,000 miles or so on this setup now is a good feeling. And it's fantastic. Now, do I like the old setup better than the new setup? No. I mean, don't get me wrong, the old setup was fantastic. I really loved it. But this new setup, the new generation with the new technology and the new Hyperco AK springs, phenomenal. I really can't recommend these enough. We'll do some harder driving in a little bit once we get past this slow car. They're going under the speed limit. So I found this cool little spot, so I figured I'd just get out of the car, talk a little bit, and kind of wrap up the video. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, me just going over the new suspension setup. As you can see, it is fairly low, but I love it like that. Negative 4.3 in the front and negative 4 in the rear, I think, from what I remember. But either way, it's definitely over negative 4, so it is very, very aggressive, very low, but that is the way that I like it. In terms of the height in the front, like how many inches I have from the front lip to the ground, it is 4 inches. I measured it before I came out, but yeah, it is 4 inches. So very, very low. But again, that is just the way that I love it. I love the way that it looks. Super aggressive amount of camber. It just looks super menacing. And obviously it handles very, very well. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions at all about the setup, please leave them in the comments below. But in the meantime, keep it clean, keep it simple, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.